It was actually way cooler than I expected it to be.
Wow, this is very intuitive.
That was cool. Oh, I did it!
Unbelievable.
That was really fun, and that was a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Welcome to Upward with Transfer, where we tackle our evolving workforce and how educators, governments, and industries are changing to keep up. We're dedicated to building effective pathways for workers and job seekers to get the skills they need to get into well-paying careers in high-growth industries. Our part in that is designing and distributing hands-on simulations that learners can use to explore new career options and develop core skills before entering an in-person vocational training program. Transfer simulations augment human educators, broadening their range of classroom possibilities without expensive facilities build-outs or specialized equipment. I'm Jack Sislak, Editorial Director at Transfer and your host. Continuing our series of episodes about non-traditional career pathways, we're joined by Amanda Longtain, Director of Economic Development here at Transfer. Let's jump in. Amanda, please go ahead and introduce yourself, tell our audience a bit about who you are and what you do here at Transfer.
Of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda Longtain. I am originally from LaPorte, Texas. I've lived in Austin now for 22 years. I have worked in Texas education for 17 years and have designed anti-poverty programs the entire time. I married a musician, have two lovely kids, and we also run a nonprofit in Austin and have an urban farm and run food security programs. Regarding my work at Transfer, my title is Director of Economic Development, very much in line with what I've described. I design anti-poverty programs for Transfer by either scaffolding our technology into existing curriculum or actually designing programs from the ground up, which really are about ensuring that all of our learners feel a sense of belonging and get the highest quality learning experience possible.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that focus on that sense of belonging. That's so important to helping people get into a pathway that's going to actually work for them and have real impact in their lives and help them be who they want to be.
Absolutely. I just have to highlight something really quick. For a couple of years, I was working at UT System, which is the system that runs all 8 academic institutions across the state of Texas.
Cool.
And we had a hypothesis that we were losing our learners because of finances. But when we actually finished the cluster analyses, what we uncovered is that we were losing students because they felt like they didn't belong on our campuses.
Aww.
And that was very transformative for me as an educator to understand that it's all about that sense of belonging.
Cool. Well, that's a really awesome note to start this whole chat on. But let's take a step back. And before we continue, how do you define a non-traditional career path?
So it's back to belonging.
Sure.
I think for a really long time, we pushed this 4-year college narrative without understanding that that is not appropriate for all learners.
Totally.
It's certainly not appropriate for students who are supporting their younger siblings or students who are already working multiple jobs.
Yeah.
And so when I think of a non-traditional career pathway, what we're really talking about is establishing pathways that really build that sense of belonging for everyone.
Yeah.
There are so many pathways that we can design that are really focused on access and equity. But for me, because the majority of students right now in the United States and the world would honestly be classified as non-traditional learners, that sense of belonging becomes even more important. So that's how I define it. That's our work, right? Is to ensure that what we develop really brings up that sense of belonging so students can persist and, support themselves and their families.
Totally. Yeah. Narrowing our focus a little bit, tell us a bit more about your own personal non-traditional pathway, please.
Of course. So as mentioned, I was raised in LaPorte, Texas, which is where the majority of petroleum is processed for the United States. I grew up on Galveston Bay, and my dad actually was an apprentice. And he migrated from Colorado and lied about his age when he was 17 years old and ended up becoming, the leader of a really large construction company.
Whoa.
Fast forward, then he began managing restaurants. He dropped out of high school when he was a junior. My mom got her GED and ended up, having access to a really successful career. But from my perspective, that means that I was non-traditional from the beginning.
Sure.
I didn't have conversations with my parents about college. I never even really talked to them about school. So as a first-generation college graduate, I lacked that sense of belonging.
Sure.
I really struggled to perform in school. I struggled to feel engaged. I struggled to feel connected. And then when I was 16 years old, I started to work in the restaurant industry. And very quickly, I understood that I had this viable set of skills that could take me really far.
Yeah.
Those skills were not uncovered in a traditional education system.
Yeah.
I didn't understand my value until I stepped outside of education and started to work. And so by the time that I was 17 working in the restaurant industry, I actually became a hostess manager. By the time that I was 18, I became a floor manager.
Wow.
And I actually managed restaurants until I was 22 years old and didn't even start college until I was 22. The other piece of this story is that moving to Austin and leaving the small town of LaPorte, Texas, really changed my perspective. I had never been exposed to intellectualism to this degree. And then moving to Austin, being surrounded by all of these students and all of these high-functioning professionals, having these really elevated conversations for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of belonging. Truly.
Cool.
And that is the inspiration behind me finally going to college at the age of 22. And I graduated within 3.5 years with 3.9, I think. I did pretty.
But who's counting?
Not me. I'm not counting. No. But it matters for a student who always felt like they didn't fit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great part of your story. Yeah, that you found your way to college at the time in the way that made sense for you. And also, I feel like there's this drive for people to immediately graduate from high school and go right to college, as your brain is still developing and everything. I don't think starting college at 22 is so late. So what I mean is, I think that that should be a larger kind of conversation about
absolutely
when it is right for people to go to college. So yeah, please continue.
And it was right for me because at that time, I felt like an adult. I had already had a career. I was managing my life, paying my bills, making investments. And so I made an informed decision about what was next. And I knew in that moment, I needed to go to college. And I started off at UT Austin, hated it. It was way too big. Then I transitioned to a small liberal arts school, and it was a phenomenal experience for me.
Cool.
For the first time, I felt seen. I was having these really amazing conversations. I had access to all of my professors, and I was really figuring out what my natural assets and skills were. And I landed on the fact that I loved education and I loved advocacy. And I wanted more than anything to ensure that people like me always felt represented and always felt heard. And so as I was getting ready to graduate from St. Edward's, my husband proposed to me. I said yes. I was accepted into a public policy master's program at Wagner NYU. And about 3 months after Matthew and I were married, I found out that I was pregnant. And it changed my entire life.
Yeah, that's intense. Yeah.
It was really intense. I was only 26 years old. Had just graduated from college, and now I'm trying to navigate a job market when I'm pregnant. That in itself is complicated.
Absolutely.
The level of information that you disclose, the legality that's attached to it was very hard for me to navigate. And so I didn't get a job. And Matthew and I had just bought a house. He was managing a small construction company, really focused on painting houses and trying to build up his music career. And we were barely making ends meet. For the first time in my life, I was struggling to pay my bills. I was
Sure.
struggling to feed my family, and I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And so I stopped looking for grown-up jobs. I'm using quotation marks here for people who can't see me, and started to work in the restaurant industry again.
Gotcha.
Because more than
Yeah.
anything, I just needed to pay my bills.
Yes.
Yes. And then the birth of Stella, my firstborn, my charismatic, hilarious child. I stayed at home for about 6 months. We were 2 months behind on our mortgage. We were going to food banks. Matthew and I were skipping meals.
Yeah.
And so we made a really hard decision as parents to have Matthew stay at home and for me to enter the workforce with my college degree.
Yeah.
The first job that I ever got was for a nonprofit, and I was the development manager writing grants, making $27,000 a year to support a family of 3.
Wow.
The other part of my story is that I've had lots of jobs, which has been great because I've learned a lot of phenomenal skills.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of really important experiences, but the reality is I had to continue climbing up the career ladder so I could support my family.
Right.
And this is coupled with the fact that I'm living in a city that is booming and
Yes.
things are getting more and more expensive. Property taxes are becoming less and less attainable. And
Sure.
so there was a lot of pressure on me as the breadwinner in my family. And so again, it's been a high value that I was able to accrue all of these skills over time, but it was really based on my reality, which is I desperately need to make more money for my family.
Which is a reality shared by countless people, probably some of whom are listening to this call right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's also, it's such a salient part of your story that you had a driving goal. You had a real reason to get out of bed every morning. And that's extremely powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your story.
Yeah.
Going from the very specific to the slightly more abstract, why do you think it's more important than ever that we start embracing these non-traditional pathways as our world and economy keep evolving?
That's a really great question. First and foremost, back to that sense of belonging and representation and ensuring that everyone feels like a valuable asset in this economy. Because everyone should feel like a valuable asset in this economy. Everyone should have enough agency and choice to make money.
Indeed.
And when we look at education policy and the reasons behind why we lost our wood shops, as an example, it's very much grounded in the fact that we started to reallocate resources to support computer labs. So one of the tricky things with education funding across the United States is that you can't supplement, you have to supplant. So that means that you have to move money from one bucket to another. And so rather than understanding the simultaneous value of running wood shops and computer labs, they decided to shutter the wood shops. So from my perspective, we are doing a lot of catching up.
Right.
And I'm incredibly grateful for the fact that we are reinvesting in things like career and technical education.
Yes.
We're reinvesting in all of these phenomenal ways of learning, but we are way behind. And the significance of developing these pathways is first and foremost, we need these pathways. That's what keeps our economy moving forward.
Absolutely.
The other piece is that everyone deserves the right to be able to meet their basic needs.
Correct.
Everyone deserves the right to have shelter, to have food, to have love, to have respect. And so again, when I'm thinking about belonging and representation, it goes back to ensuring that no matter who you are, no matter which zip code you come from, you have opportunity. So that's really what it's about for me. I just want to make sure that everyone has access to a healthy and happy life.
Awesome.
Because in turn, that increase in gross domestic happiness actually means that we'll make more money.
Yes.
It does.
That's a real win-win. We're all about the win-win. I also love gross domestic happiness. Yes, from my days in happiness culture, and if people know about this term, definitely look into it. It's a really interesting way of looking at human development metrics versus just pure GDP and stuff like that. Really awesome term to throw out there. Yeah, and that's an awesome place to end today, which is, it's always about people here at Transfer. It's always about, the people we help, the end users. It's about the people who build this amazing project we're all working on. It's about our partners out there in the real world. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda. Thank you, all of you at home, for listening. This has been another amazing chat here. Definitely join us for the next one of these non-traditional career paths chats on Upward with Transfer. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Wave at the camera. We're out of here. We're done.